Hey everybody, welcome back to our Beyond the Boardroom podcast, again presented by the Black NBAA DFW chapter. I am really excited for this topic, super excited that I probably don't have a voice now from talking so much about it, but actually, ironically, the title of this or the focus on this is on public speaking and owning your voice. So let me get my voice together, actually.
Yeah, so welcome back.
Yeah.
And I'm excited as well to hear about this and really learn more skills about public speaking. It's important for all of us in our careers. So.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about public speaking, you probably are envisioning someone getting up for a TED Talk, right? We're probably not going to talk too much about that part, right? Public speaking or speaking publicly happens with many of us, many of our members, all day, every day at work. And so with that, I really wanted to bring in an expert who can help us, our members, because again, this podcast is curated by you and the topics that you present to us. We really wanted to dig deeper. You know, we are just kicking off the new year. We are getting into some, performance reviews, some presentations with leaderships. The whole nine is going to happen, frankly, this year. And we really want to make sure you are armed for success. So hopefully you got a piece of paper and you're going to take some notes. We're going to keep it fun, but I think there's going to be some great nuggets here. So with that, I want to introduce someone that is familiar to our organization. She actually served on a panel a couple years ago on entrepreneurship, Mrs. Jacqueline M. Baker. Hey, Jacqueline.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for always investing in our organization. And, I was saying, even with our last podcast, that, the COVID environment has obviously a lot of cons and things that have impacted us personally, professionally. But I think the pro of it is that we don't have to have someone in the studio in order to talk to them. You are way over there in DC. And it's just an honor to be able to chat with you, real time in this environment. So thank you for taking the time out of your day. And can you just share a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here. As you said, I've had a wonderful opportunity to serve the organization in the past, and it's actually inspiring to be around your members because they take so much action after they learn. Well, I have had the wonderful opportunity over many years to dabble in a couple of different spaces. I have been grateful that I've had the opportunity to live on the entrepreneurial side of the fence and also on the corporate side of the fence as well, and use my skill set holistically to apply to both of those areas. I'll say at the end of the day, really what I want to make sure that I leave on this earth when I'm no longer here is I want to leave a legacy of the idea that you really can start the things that you want to do and move to your next step without permission. And so the things that I start, the tools that I release, the books that I write, the trainings that I do, even my corporate work always points back to my life thesis, which is helping people start and get to their next step. And I do that through entrepreneurship. I do that through innovation leadership. I do that through consulting at organizations across the world. But no matter what I do, it'll always point back to that thesis.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And again, such a robust background. I think you guys saw her Instagram handle, Magical Jax. And definitely check out Jacqueline, all the great work that she does. Okay, so let's jump into the topic again. Public speaking. I'll give a quick, I was sharing this with one of our board members actually, so I'll share this a little bit with you guys and then I'm going to jump off with some questions. I don't like speaking as much. I really don't. And people are usually surprised to hear that, but
Very.
Are you really?
Yeah.
I don't. And it starts back when, so in my family, we have a history of speech impediments. Several folks in my family stutter. And I actually grew up, I didn't stutter per se, but I did have a speech impediment and I had to go to speech therapy. There were certain words that I struggled with and I still struggle with to this day. You will know those words because if you gave me a script, I'd probably omit certain words like, nah, I ain't doing that one, especially if I'm talking fast. So it's a struggle for me, and I sometimes clam up when I'm about to speak. So it's not necessarily fear of the audience per se, it's fear of what's going to come out my mouth and is it going to be coherent. So yes, now you learned something about me. And I don't know if that was new for you, Jacqueline, as well. But when I have to talk, and let's just maybe talk about, just basic meetings, and again, running a board or being in my 9 to 5, it's meetings all day long. especially virtually. So I'm just curious, Jacqueline, any, tips or, about speaking. Many of our members, again, whether it's virtually or maybe in person, they have to talk quite a bit.
Yeah, so the thing to think about as it relates to public speaking is to first just release all those unconscious biases that you have connected to the words, right? Because as soon as you think public speaking, most people's minds go to a TED Talk or a huge audience with hundreds of people in it, or maybe even 20s of people, which gives a lot of people anxiety. And to release yourself of whatever that vision is that you think public speaking is. The reality is we are going to have to use our voices, or we should be using our voices to advocate for ourselves, to speak about the things that we care about, to get to our next level in our career. And meetings are often a good breeding ground place to start those conversations. Because what you don't want to do, and I'm sure that we'll get to the conversation a little bit later, when you start to get to things like performance reviews and calibrations, and in spaces where people are talking about you and you're not in the room, how have you used your voice in advance in order to give them some content to speak highly of you? And meetings are a good breeding ground for that. The thing too in meetings, and I've been there for those of you who follow me on social, I speak pretty publicly about the fact that I have anxiety issues, and I've had anxiety issues since I was 19. And the reason why that's important to know is because if you do a quick Google search of me, you'll see me on stages, you'll see me traipsing across stages looking like there's nothing wrong and there's no fear and there's no anxiety. And anxiety still very much exists in my life. But what I do is I don't let myself fall into this trap of, oh no, anxiety's coming, so I'm not going to reach past it to do the things that I really want to do with my life or to impact people as well. And so as it relates to meetings, even when you're clamming up, you got that feeling in your stomach because you're about to give an answer and you're not so sure is the answer right, or you're about to ask a question and you're not so sure, oh my gosh, like, is this question going to make me look stupid? 9 times out of 10, someone else is waiting for someone to ask that question. And usually it's that person that we remember from meetings because they spoke up, they gave their 2 cents into a situation. And so for meetings, really use them as a breeding ground to get your voice out and to give people content to speak highly of you when you really, really need them to later in the future.
I think that's great advice, Jacqueline, because I candidly, earlier on in my career, I didn't speak a lot in meetings. And to be honest with you, I've always been this person that's like, I don't need to be the loudest voice in the room. What people I think will say about me throughout my career is that when Cherice says something, we need to pay attention, right? Because I don't speak as much. But to be fully transparent and probably more introspective, there's been opportunities where I probably should have said something. And so, Jacqueline, I would love your point of view, because there may be people that are watching that are like, hey, I'm an introvert, I don't need to say much, that was already said, okay, cool. And you kind of just sit in the room and you're observing, right? And I would just love to get your perspective on that.
I am completely of the school that if you don't have anything to say, don't feel like you need to pile on. I'll tell you, one of my biggest pet peeves is this phrase, to piggyback on what they just said. If you find yourself saying to piggyback on what they just said, you're probably about to repeat what somebody else just said. So I think if you're feeling like, oh, I want to muster up those words, like, think about it. Am I just about to repeat what someone else just said? I am not a huge fan of just talking to talk. Like you, Cherice, I believe that I use my words in a way so that when I do decide to open up my mouth, people are like, oh, she has something to say. Now, the thing is that you have to give yourself permission to say that thing, because sometimes you'll have something to say and you're holding you're holding yourself back from saying it, out of fear, out of, what other people might think, etc. And I think it's just better to get it out there. But I am not a huge fan of just talking to talk or repeating what somebody before you just said.
Yeah, but it is a technique that many people use, and they seem to win, if you will, by doing that. So, it is what it is.
Well, that's interesting that you say that. It is a technique that people use as it relates to repeating. But I think that where that comes into a challenge is when you think about the people at the organization, your company that you want to collaborate with, the people that you want to work with, the people that you may choose to work with on special projects, those people that are constantly just trying to one up and repeat what someone else just said. Sometimes those people aren't always invited to be a part of projects because they're not a joy to work with. It's like, man, they're prolonging meetings when who wants to be in long meetings just to be in long meetings? And so I think it can eventually come back to bite you.
Yes, long meetings. Oh, And Demetrius, feel free to, chime away with some, ask some questions, because you are
Oh
a
yeah,
self-proclaimed introvert, right?
well, so it's really interesting because at work, I'm kind of totally different. My team, they have this running joke that I always have questions. I will sit and I'll run meetings and I'll talk all the time. But yeah, outside of that, I'm more introverted.
Yeah. And just to kind of actually segue off of the question you just asked, as leaders, right? And we have many board members, or I'm sorry, members of our organization who are leaders. And as a leader, and I have direct reports, sometimes I struggle with, should I be speaking or should my direct reports be speaking? So again, I'm thinking about my personal brand, but I'm also thinking about my leadership style and allowing my direct reports to have an opportunity to, say something on the floor, because oftentimes, unfortunately, if I speak, they feel like, well, I don't want to speak. So I would love your perspective on that.
That is huge. A huge lesson in leadership growth, a huge lesson in development as you grow and expand in your career. I say all the time that I enjoy leading a team, which I've had the opportunity to do at a couple of organizations. But it's a different muscle, and one of those muscles is clearing the way so that your team can move forward. For those who know me personally, you know that I am a doer. Like, I am a self-proclaimed doer. I am always ready to roll my sleeves up and to do the work. But as it relates to leadership and really being a good leader and letting other people have a voice, right? It is stepping back sometimes. And to your point, Cherice, not always being the first one to answer the questions if you are in a position of power. And it's because your answers are going to sometimes direct what other people feel comfortable with saying. If people aren't at the point in their career where they want to counter, or they don't have that confidence yet to challenge, they may be apprehensive in giving their opinion because the boss spoke up. And so I do believe that as a part of leadership journey, it's not just always about your voice. It's also about creating a safe space for the people that report to and the people whose leadership journey you're responsible for, you should help with, letting them have a voice as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's definitely something that I always try to prep my team and say, hey, go for it, Or if it's something where we may want to like chit chat prior and make sure we're aligned, before we go into a meeting. I'm like, the floor is yours, do what you got to do. But you kind of mentioned as we were starting this conversation, like, many of us have annual reviews happening right now, or in the near future, and we really got to use our voice then. And to your point, you mentioned you should be doing prep work ahead of time, right? Like this conversation, like chatting in meetings and having a point of view. But any specific advice or guidance you would give for those specific performance reviews that happen?
Yeah, for the specific performance reviews, the one thing I will make very, very clear is that your performance review and the process around it does not start on performance review day.
Right.
That's the reason why what you say before, how you're seeding things before, the types of relationship that you built across the organization, those things matter way more than the actual day of. I mean, the day of really should be looked at as a formality. Like, this is the culmination of the conversations that I've had, the seeds that I've planted, the things that I've given to relationships at work. This is just the culmination and almost a box check of it. The biggest recommendation that I'll make as it relates to our topic today is to stick to the facts. A lot of times we'll let our emotions get ahead of us, and you get around to, what I feel is, and the real question is, can you back up what you're saying you've accomplished for the year? Can you back up what you say that you have checked off the list for your list of accomplishments over, whatever time period you're being evaluated? But truly, the performance review itself shouldn't start on the day of. The other thing that I like to recommend too is, some organizations implement this automatically. They implement the opportunity for 360 reviews. Quite frankly, if you are not at a level at your position where that's a resource to you, right, or that's not an investment that the organization has provided, I highly recommend that you do your own 360 review. Like, there's nothing, usually there's nothing in the rule books that says that you can pop up a quick Google survey, put together some questions, and ask people, are you willing to give me some feedback as I grow in my leadership journey?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's just something you can do on your own, and quite frankly, for free. And so it's actually Google Forms that you can utilize. So those are some things that I definitely like to recommend that people keep in mind around that review and calibration time.
That makes sense. And, let's talk a little bit in our brief time we have left, to talk about virtual, right? Because many of us don't have the benefit of being in person and kind of having a lot of that small talk that you may do in a hallway. We're virtual, and many performance reviews, frankly, or any presentations are now going to be in a virtual setting, or have been in a virtual setting for quite some time. So hopefully we've all refined it at this point. But any guidance that you would give in this sort of virtual Zoom environment, again, let's talk the full gamut: presentations, reviews, etc. Like, what is your advice?
Absolutely. Well, first thing that I recommend, and I could talk about this quite frankly all day, and you know that, the first thing that I recommend is to set yourself up for success as much as possible. So before the words formulate out of your mouth, I mean, really do a checklist of, is my power turned on? If you can hardwire your internet versus using wireless, like what are the things that you can check the box on so that the conversation is easier? Like, and I'll to go like super personal for a second, I'll come back to this, I promise, in just a moment. It's no secret, I shared before, that I have anxiety issues. And anxiety for me usually means that I sweat very easily in interviews, when I'm public speaking, when I'm in a space that I care about is when I get nervous, and my nervousness really usually ends up permeating as some type of sweat. Well, one thing that you'll also notice about me, if you look up videos or pictures of me presenting, is that 9 times out of 10, it's a little different today because I'm at home, I'm sleeveless. And so what I've done is I've checked the box. I've said, hey, I know that I'm going to get hot fast. I know I'm going to be sweaty. So I'm either doing one or two things. I'm either going sleeveless or I'm wearing a thick enough blazer so that nobody knows what's going on. And so for you, when you think about these environments, how can you check the box on technology, right? To make sure that the things that might go wrong, and oftentimes do go wrong, that they don't go wrong. So that's first and foremost. Second is, while I don't think that virtual overall, quite frankly, is going to go away, I think that there'll be lots of organizations that realize that there are so many efficiencies in this more virtual world. I do believe that the opportunity for people to do more, like, virtual interviews and meetings will just continue. And so for you, ask yourself, like, have you did a 360 of your space? And I know, like, as trivial as it seems, as sort of kind of, as surfacey as it may seem, guess what people are doing when they're looking at you on camera? They're checking out your background. They're looking to see what's going on around you.
And might I say, you look like you're in the Oval Office. I didn't mean to.
Right.
I said, okay, we got the. What degree is that right there? Okay, we got. Okay. Anyway, I see the trophy over there. I see what you're doing, Jacqueline. But go ahead.
I am setting a good example for the words that I'm saying. That's what I'm doing. But yeah, just, check your background. I mean, I know that it's a professional setting, but come on, the average adult attention span is 7 seconds. And as soon as you see someone's background, I was looking behind you all, like, what's going on back there behind them?
This is real green screen here.
So check the box.
Right.
Also, take your time. The reason why I say take your time, it's not to, be slow in your responses or slow in the things that you're going to say, but, there are often delays that are going on. We're dealing with a lot of delays where other people end up talking over each other. So, like, take your time to get your words out. I'll also say that even more than it was previous to COVID, it's important to do your research, because the reality is, although someone will be interviewing you or having a meeting with you, people are wore out. They are wore out with sitting in front of cameras time in and time out. And so as much research as you can do in advance so that you're not answering questions or asking questions anyway, for things that, you really could have did research on your own, or that you really is not appropriate to ask questions like that at that time, you would have already done that stuff in advance. The last thing that I'll say is a little bit more of a tech recommendation, but it's really real, is as much as you can get at eye level, get eye level.
Yes.
Meaning that your new eye contact now, it is the dot on your camera. All right. It is the dot that, wherever your webcam is coming from, that's your new eye contact. And so how can you get that up at eye level so that you're not looking up or looking down and it's just a little bit draining on the other person on the other side? Honestly, if you took just a couple moments and just Google best practices for, video recordings or for virtual situations, recommendations will come up around lighting. Like, it's important that where you're lighting at as it relates to your camera is really, really important as well. I am a huge fan of checking the box on those things first, so that, what you're saying and your technology and your power, none of that stuff is an issue. And so those are some huge recommendations that I have.
Can I just ask something?
Yeah, go
really
ahead.
Quick? So you mentioned camera a few times, and I'm finding that a lot of people are camera shy when they're working from home. They'll get on the call, but they don't want to be seen. You know, maybe they didn't do their makeup, do their hair or whatever. They don't want you to see their background. How do you feel about that? Does it increase your executive presence maybe to be seen?
Absolutely. Not having your camera on, quite frankly, is the equivalent of sitting in the back of the room trying to be unnoticed. And I'm not going to say that the expectation should be that every time you get on a meeting that you're going to have your camera on. But to be quite honest, engaging with people and being able to see them, it's actually a lot more just visually stimulating. Like, it's a lot easier for me to connect with people versus, you know, talking to somebody and I'm just looking at their name or their avatar. Also, this is another lesson in like checking the room. Of course, you know, one of the careers that I've decided to lean into throughout my professional life is modern etiquette. And I teach modern etiquette all over the world now. And so the reality is, it is so incredibly important for you to check your surroundings. So if you hop on a call and you had all intentions of not turning your camera on, and you see that, you know, 6 of the 8 people do have their camera on, yeah, you probably need to try and turn your camera on, right? Unless there's something happening where you're just like, hey guys, I'm so sorry today, I can't have my camera on, my kids, whatever, right? Whatever's going on. But check the temperature in the room and just see, you know, what's appropriate. How should I ebb and flow? Now, if everyone has their camera off, do it. Like, turn your camera off with them, like you really want to do anyway. But where you can shine brighter, go ahead and shine brighter with your actual camera on.
And I'm so glad you asked that question, because I mean, especially at this top of 2020, you know, I was like, I'm not getting on the camera. I barely want to brush my teeth today. And then totally by the end, it was like, all right, let me top up. Let me put on something decent and brush my hair. But Jacqueline, you have so many nuggets. Would you mind if we do a part 2 here? Because we do want to keep our podcast pretty tight, but it's so many nuggets, and I want to keep jumping in with you. So would you mind holding on, and maybe we can do a part 2 for our membership?
Absolutely. Happy to share as much as I can so people can start and keep on moving. So absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And so with that, we will wrap up this podcast. Again, hopefully you guys heard public speaking. It's not just standing on a stage. It is a way of life. You need to talk. You need to get your voice out there and make sure what you are saying, that is your brand. And so as you guys think about, you know, the 2021, as you're setting visions and goals for yourself, please make sure that you're refining your public speaking because it will go a long way, especially in this new environment. So with that, thank you all for joining us for Beyond the Boardroom. And again, we're going to be back with Jacqueline because she has some nuggets and we want more of that. So thank you all. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Bye.